engineering conversation and innovation. This is Schulich Connects.
My name is Anders Nygren. I am the Dean of the Schulich School of Engineering, and it is my pleasure to have you all here to host you for the first Schulich Connects event of the season, entitled Smart Health, Transforming Cardiovascular Care with Imaging and AI. Before we get started, I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge that the University of Calgary campus is located here in southern Alberta on the traditional territories of the peoples of the Treaty 7 region. And this includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, specifically Nose Hill District 5 and Elbow District 6. Artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize healthcare. From higher quality images to accuracy and consistency of results and outcomes, AI-driven technologies can increase speed and operational efficiency in the healthcare system. And this is especially true in the world of cardiovascular care that we'll be talking about this morning, where AI can enable physicians to make faster and more accurate diagnoses and design personalized treatment plans for those who need it most. So these AI-driven platforms that we'll hear about this morning, they improve patient outcomes and they save lives. So this morning's panel will bring together a diverse group of industry leaders and researchers who will share insights into the latest breakthroughs shaping the future of digital health. Before I pass it over to our speakers, I'd just like to remind you to hold any questions you would have. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of this event, and at that time we will have somebody bring a microphone to you if you wish to ask a question. I'd also remind you that this panel discussion is being recorded, and that recording will be made available after the event. So with that, I'd now like to introduce you to Dr. Tina Rinker, to my right here, today's moderator. Dr. Rinker is a professor and associate head of research in the Department of Biomedical Engineering here at the Schulich School of Engineering. She is also jointly appointed in the Cummings School of Medicine's Department of Physiology and Pharmacology, and she is a member of the Arnie Charbonneau Cancer Institute. In addition, Dr. Rinker holds additional memberships in the Libin Cardiovascular Institute, the Snyder Institute for Chronic Diseases, and the Alberta Child Health Research Institute. She leads research in the areas of diagnostic and therapeutic platform development involving cellular mechanobiology, transcriptional regulation, and cell signaling, utilizing cellular models, clinical studies, and device design for applications in cancer and cardiovascular disease. So I'd like to pass things over to Tina, who will introduce us to the rest of today's panel. Tina, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anders. It's great to be here today. It's great to see you all. Looking forward to a fantastic panel today. We've got an excellent group of experts here from academic backgrounds, industry backgrounds, entrepreneurial backgrounds that can give their perspective and the clinical backgrounds around the use of AI in healthcare with a focus on the cardiovascular disease. And so it's my pleasure today to introduce this fantastic panel. I'm going to start here with Dr. Elena DiMartino. Dr. DiMartino is a professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering. She's a recognized expert in cardiovascular biomechanics. This involves image-based tools, improving therapy selection for aortic aneurysms. So over the past 16 years, she's been kind of bridging the gap between research and industry applications, really driving towards advances in medicine and cardiovascular disease through her tools and through her research there. In 2020, she co-founded Vita Medical Solutions, an imaging software company dedicated to the development of AI-based tools to help surgeons design better treatments and optimize timing of intervention for abdominal aortic aneurysm disease. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you.
And then next, we have Dr. James White. Dr. White is a professor of medicine and director of precision medicine at the Libin Cardiovascular Institute in the Cummings School of Medicine. Dr. White leads an investigative team partnered with data scientists, biomedical engineers who share common interests surrounding the development of disruptive digital solutions for cardiovascular care. So he's an internationally recognized clinical scientist in cardiovascular imaging with a focus on cardiomyopathy, diagnosis, risk predictive modeling. He leads several national and international research directives in this area. Welcome, James. And then we have Esty Lee. So happy to introduce Esty. She's a University of Calgary alumni and Director of Research Commercialization at the local Circle Cardiovascular Imaging. She drives advancements at the intersection of cardiovascular health, AI, and advanced image processing. She dived deeply into the medical imaging field while she was doing her master's that had a focus on brain imaging. In her current role, Lee collaborates with clinical leaders, cross-functional teams of software engineers, regulatory specialists, and product managers to translate AI-driven algorithms into practical use, into clinical use. So welcome, Esty.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much to all of you for joining us for our panel today. I'd like to give you 1 minute to talk about your area. How do you see AI and cardiovascular disease in your background? So kind of what brings you to our panel today? Dr. DiMartino.
Start. Thank you very much for being here. Why am I here? So I started going to the vascular and cardiac surgery, so the surgical room when I was doing my PhD, and I was doing at least twice a week, right? So observing and really trying to understand what was going on, coming back to the lab, doing experiments, and that's why I'm here, right? And so then I spent a lot of years researching, especially on aortic aneurysms, and now I'm back in surgery, observing surgeons using our software. So that's really exciting for me, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Elena. Esty?
Hi, everyone. So my journey into cardiovascular health started around 2014 when I joined Circle. Back in the days, we were building our cardiovascular software based mostly on the traditional image and signal processing. So I had helped design and build a lot of our core product features for our MR product. Since then, we have also introduced ourselves into the CT cardiovascular space. And around 2018 was when we introduced our first ML network to help do automation in our image segmentation. And from 2018 to now, most of our product has incorporated some component of AI that really helps speed things up. And I've seen our product design evolve from building efficiencies to improve manual user-driven workflow to now that we're designing our product to be AI-driven, minimizing user workflow. So I'm really excited to be here and discuss with all these experts around me. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
And,
Yep.
me now. So yeah, first of all, pleasure to be here and to be with these other amazing guests. I'm a cardiologist, and so I come about this world by trying to solve the problems that I was facing every day. And both my colleagues and I have really been really impressed by some of the unique capacity of artificial intelligence to be able to solve those problems. But it's really started for me back in 2007, before AI was really getting going, and developing large scalable research programs with patients, so getting them to participate in sharing their data for innovation. We didn't realize back then that actually their data was going to be so valuable. And so I became director of the Stevenson Cardiac Imaging Center in 2013, where Circle Cardiovascular was born, and saw an opportunity to actually engage patients in that process. And so by asking them to participate in our research, we grew to a population of 30,000 patients that are actually working with us to innovate in this field. And most recently, that led to expansion and launch of a center called the Nelson Pulse Center, which now has access, secure and ethical access with AHS to over 1 million patients of diagnostic data linked to electronic health records. And so we are trying to catalyze solving the problems by being able to provide access to the right data for the right problems. And so that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so as we look into the current state of the incorporation of AI into cardiovascular care, which you've been talking a bit about here, can you expand a little bit in terms of what types of AI you're incorporating? What do you see as the current status of AI in cardiovascular disease from your perspective? So from the kind of engineering perspective, the academic perspective, clinical, and the industry perspective here. So what's going on in terms of kind of earlier stage development or cutting edge kind of technology, and then through the continuum of clinical practice? What are we seeing today? Whoever wants to start.
Should I start from the start? So I guess the way I see AI and the advancement in, especially in cardiovascular science, is from pretty pictures to functional, to really understand what's going on now and also predict what is going on tomorrow or in a month or in a year, right? So we did so much work in having those pictures and seeing. Can you imagine being a cardiologist and not having a good picture of the heart? It's unimaginable today. And I hope that soon it will be unimaginable to not have that functional information and to not know what the patient is going to experience tomorrow, in a month, in a year. And so that's what we work for, and that's why it's so exciting for me to work with James, because he was doing this before it was cool, before anybody else was doing it. And so really connecting with data, connecting data together, and really having the clinician in the loop, which is very important. And I'm not going to take your spot in this, but just to say, and that's also what we do with my company, is to really bring the clinician in the loop who contextualizes and really explains what's going on, right? So when everybody talks about explainable AI, you might have heard this, it has become one of those catchwords. What does it mean? And so as an engineer, it means that it is really built and ingrained into the physics and physiology of the patient, but that it also gives the opportunity to the surgeon to play a part, right? Not just to see, I don't want to see, and I'm hoping the surgeon also doesn't want to see a green light or a red light, what to do. That's not meant to replace. It's not meant to replace. It's really meant to work in tandem with the health professional to drive the next care.
Thank you.
Well, sorry to jump. Maybe we should go in order, but I just wanted to kind of expand on your point there that the concept of explainability is really, I think, a key one to just stop on and explain. So let's explain that. So explainability means that you have all seen predictions from different things. Maybe you don't realize they're doing it, but there's no explanation in that. It'll tell you an answer, but it doesn't tell you how it got there. Now, in many fields, that's acceptable. I mean, and trust is built just inherently by using products. In the medical field, when decisions are actually changing how we're going to intervene on a patient, are we going to do surgery, are we not going to do surgery, like in Elena's case, then that's not good enough. And so if I give you a number saying there's a 62% probability that this aorta is going to rupture, but there's no explanation behind it, a surgeon won't gain trust, a patient won't gain trust. What we're doing, I think collectively, is trying to build it on biomechanical models and physics principles, so that when the question is asked, why do you say that, it's actually because this region of the aorta, this region of the heart, is actually done this over time. That is paramount to not only being able to gain trust in patients and physicians, but also towards overcoming some of the barriers we'll talk about with respect to regulation in the AI space. So I just wanted to highlight the importance of that.
Going back to the beginning of the pipeline, as an engineer, I see AI incorporated from, at the beginning, image registration, image acquisition, and reconstructing good quality images, to pre-processing the images, including classifying what type of images they are, applying corrections so that we can then actually process and analyze the images to derive useful clinical biomarkers, which then the clinicians can take on to produce a report, or in the future we may have some predictability pre-generated report for better outcomes.
Yeah, and I think that just the migration that we're seeing with AI in cardiovascular care, especially in imaging, is that we started out replicating tasks, right? It was replace human effort, and in doing so, improve reproducibility and reduce errors. Fantastic. And that's really where companies like Circle were able to enter the market. Okay, it's explainable because it just did what I was going to do anyway. I can see it did it right. The next step is repurposing data. So it's taking that same data and doing things that the human wouldn't have been able to do, but it's still isolated to what is in front of me, okay? And that is like taking an ECG, for example, which we all get, and it can actually tell me what disease it is or what's my likelihood of getting a disease. That's not something that I can do as a cardiologist, but it's isolated to one test. The future is going to be the field of multimodal AI. Because what that will do is start to integrate clinical information about you as an individual. And that is where decisions are made, is that I've got to contextualize this set of images to you. What symptoms are you having? What are your medication profiles? If I can do that, we actually build an AI-assisted or augmented clinical decision tool. Now, that's where the barriers are going to be pretty high, appropriately, but I think that's where the next big paradigm shift in AI is actually integrating your health data with these tests to actually assist in predicting and making the best decision.
Dr. Wright, just to give the audience an idea of how much AI has made our workflows more efficient. Can you describe at the beginning when all the manual segmentation workflow, how long did it take you at that time? And now with the current state of AI in our product, how long does it take you to go through a clinical workflow?
Yeah, I mean, that first part of reducing human effort. So what was the effort? So I started my clinical practice in cardiovascular MRI in 2007 after completing my training. I actually was one of the first users of the prototype of Circle Cardiovascular. And so we used to literally draw about, 80 contours on the heart to get one measurement called the ejection fraction. And it was done different every time somebody did it. And it was painful. And it literally took over 20 minutes for me to do that. Now I open up the software and it just appears. So it's reduced down to seconds. And so the impact on us being able to deliver clinical care, but also do it better, has been, you can't even measure it. It's just, a 2,000-fold return. Yeah.
And I wanted to expand just a little bit on the concept of trust, which of course is so important in AI. And you've all seen AI in action, and you trust what you see, and it's good. But for medical, again, we need to go to the next level. And what I have been most excited about is when we do our methods, and again, it's completely explainable. So we do our methods, and then we compare not only to individual patients, but also we've developed methods to compare groups and categories, and then visualize it. And we've been so surprised to see that subtle differences emerge with AI that would never emerge with your eye. But what's even more exciting is that then they make sense. When you look at them in the context of mechanics and physiology, they make sense. So they're very subtle, but they make sense. You wouldn't have been able to pick them up when you see them, and when they're offered to you, they make sense.
Yeah, and I think with your work and your software platform that you've developed, it's like looking at an aortic aneurysm. This is not just a balloon in the aorta. It has lots of variability. So from the first principles, you've been able to kind of identify even small regions. So these subtleties are not necessarily not clinically important, right? So being able to denote a really weak piece of the aorta is critical for deciding for the clinician to then get that information and say, oh, this is a very serious hotspot here. We need to watch it, or we need to act on it. So I think the subtleties can be really clinically meaningful too.
Yeah, and that idea of seeing what you couldn't see before, for me, is very powerful, and I think it's also what underlies much of the work that Dr. White is doing.
It's fantastic. So let's expand a little bit what you brought up barriers. So what are you seeing? Let's talk a little bit about barriers to we see a lot of implementation of AI in other areas. And you mentioned a little bit about how it's different in healthcare. We've got to build trust. Can you talk a bit about why we're not seeing faster integration of AI in healthcare? And there's different perspectives. You each have a different perspective on this. So whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I can start this time in terms of implementation and introducing it as a clinical product. There are challenges in developing AI that provides accurate results. One of them being that we need lots of data across different populations that have variability for training. And this data is hard to come by. Ideally, for a network, we may want thousands of data sets from different populations across the world, or if we're focusing on even one country, across different sites. And then after we get the data, we need multiple experts to annotate them so that we can use them for training and validation. All of that can take a long time to collect and also an expensive process. After we have attained the data, we've trained a model, how do we move it from a research tool into a clinical product? We need to go through regulatory bodies, such as in the US, the FDA. And they have very stringent and comprehensive process, especially when it comes to AI. They're very strict. We need to show a large validation plan with clinical, technical validations. And at the end of the day, we will go through many iterations of communications with the FDA team. This whole process could take years before the features can be cleared for clinical use.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, at the highest of levels, when we talk about barriers, the first thing is to compare it to what the incentive is to get around that barrier. Because what I find is that when trying to be champion to bring new technology into the healthcare system, if it's incentivized by it's a big problem and it's something that people really care about and the right people care about it, then even the largest barriers can actually be overcome. But if you're trying to solve a small problem that not a lot of people are incentivized by, even the smallest of barriers is a non-starter. So that's my first point. So pick the right problem is the key. I think that care integration, trust, these are things that are really, really critical. But I do want to mention a couple of things about data access. And so there's a lot of tension between data privacy and security and innovation. Because one of the things that the healthcare systems can do is say, well, if I lock it up and I don't use it, then at least I won't get in trouble, right? So there's no penalty for not getting a data breach, but there's huge penalties for data leakage and concern about privacy. Is there a matched penalty for not using data? So for every time we don't use data to innovate, to improve care, and to reduce bad outcomes for patients, there should be a penalty. Because the data locked up in the vaults in the province or in the country means that we're not using it for the benefit of the society. And so I think that we really need to shift our mindset to saying, let's collectively, as a society, let's innovate. Let's improve care. Let's not just lock up our data so that it doesn't have the opportunity to do that.
And I think that requires partnership and integration of different fields that perhaps sometimes don't speak to each other. So one of my roles at the university is with the Institutes for Transdisciplinary Scholarship. And so the idea of having at the same table policymakers, who's going to make those decisions that are going to compel? Well, but how do you do that in an ethical way? So you need on the same table, you need that ethics community, you need people that work on the trust, on the biases, because it's very easy to say we have to do it, but are we going to then get access to primarily a certain population that perhaps will give more easily access to the data and then bias our model, as well as the community, and then of course the engineers and the clinicians. So until and unless we have everybody at the table, we may not be able to solve this efficiently.
Okay, great. So we've talked about barriers and policy and regulatory, the need for clinical validation of the technologies. What do you think about workforce? Are you seeing any barriers in other areas?
I can say that one of the biggest barriers from the workforce perspective is literacy and just understanding what the technology is, what it's doing, and how it should be used appropriately. Every time that a tool is not used appropriately, it leads to a breakdown of trust and therefore a lack of adoptability. The other thing is that when the workforce is doing what they do, the amount of effort that it takes to deviate from what they would do routinely has to be balanced by the return on investment for them. So if they are asked, oh, when you're about to take care of that patient, I want you to go and click on this button, I want you to do this and do this. Okay, that needs to be quantified against what's the return for that moment for that person. If they're incentivized to do it, they will do it. And if they're also empowered by their leadership to do it, they will do it. But it's a very delicate balance. You can't just force AI onto people. It has to be done very carefully and with change management.
Well, Dr. Wright, with the introduction of AI to reduce and minimize the workflow, that would help with some of that. Instead of needing to learn a 20-minute workflow to define all those contours, if the contours are initialized, and some of the doctors may not need to learn a complicated workflow, that would also be an incentive for them to take on this technology.
Absolutely, and I think that's why this part of the industry has grown and has adopted the technology. I think that the challenges that we're now seeing is that the technology is shifting and AI is shifting into doing things that may be a bit more disruptive, such as large language models, where they're actually, we can ask the model, please review this patient's medical chart and review all of the medical imaging test data and tell me, is there going to be value from doing my next test? Now, that's very efficient, actually. So, in fact, it can be conversational. But that's where we start to get into the workforce has to have literacy and understanding about when that's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, and understanding that the responses they get back are of augmentation, not replacement. And so I do think that educating the workforce is a really critical part of this.
And I was thinking about training. Who is going to have the technical competence, but also some of the other competences to work on these problems, right? And so we try to train biomedical engineers who have had to speak the language of the healthcare system. And that to us is very important. And I think when we started building our program in biomedical engineering, and Dr. Carlos is here, one of the questions I asked myself was, do we need that workforce trained in this way where they already understand? They don't have to be taught. They don't have to go to the surgeons and being taught of what the problems are. And so then I reflected on my experience, and I was brought, I go back there, but I was brought to the operating room even before I was in graduate school. And I was brought in, and they were doing a heart surgery, which probably inspired my career, but it really taught me so much. And so I think that that's when we are going to be able to see those solutions to come at the right time and to not not try to replace the healthcare, is when people, the trainees, would have seen the problem, would have known the problems from the start.
Yeah, it's kind of integrating it into the culture, right? Like integrating into how people work. So as we kind of prepare to go into the Q&A section here, maybe just a few words about the future. So what do you see as the future? How do we take the innovations and move into what do you see coming in the near future and then maybe the longer term future? And we only have, a short answer here, but just kind of to get everybody excited about AI and seed some questions here that are coming up in the Q&A section. The future of AI in cardiovascular care.
I think the fact that I can't appropriately answer that because it's changing so fast is the answer. Because I don't think we know. Everything that I thought I knew a year ago has changed, and I now come up with different responses to that. I think that what we're going to see is, my interest, and I think because it's the future, is multimodal, the integration of data across your health profile, inclusive of the medical imaging testing. The second is what we're going to see is something that is called agentic AI, which is task-specific AI tools. That is, I'm going to be the agent, AI agent that reads your MRI, but it's going to talk to the medical record that's got another task, which is figure out what the profile and trajectory of this patient is. Okay, now that agent is going to go talk to the care recommender, and it's going to come up with the list of what should the next test be. And that is happening. Now, you may say, I don't want that. The momentum is being driven by the innovation and the opportunity, and it's something that we are just simply going to see.
For myself, as a software development point of view of the future of AI, I look forward to continuing to partner with researchers and clinicians from the beginning to end to design and incorporate AI into our products. Since we're working together from the beginning, there will be trust built, and with feedback, do triple ways together. And what was I going to say? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think I can only echo the same words in multimodality. So going from how it looks to how it works and how it's going to work in the future, as well as maybe one thing that we haven't touched so much is the idea of continuous monitoring. How do we create systems that are actually able to monitor the patients when they are not coming to the office, if they're not coming to the office?
Sorry, yeah, thank you, Dr. DiMartino. You reminded me. What I wanted to mention was that not only can we cross-reference modality information from different types of images, but also as we have continuing studies, patients coming back for regular checkups, we can cross-reference those and find patterns and useful clinical markers across different populations, within the populations, to be able to help early disease prediction, or at least suggestion for the doctors to make informed decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. All right, now it's your turn. So what questions do you have for this fantastic panel that we have here? We have questions from the audience. Yes. Or here comes a microphone.
Thank you. I had a question mostly about the AI models and bias reduction. I was just wondering what models exactly do you think would work or would need more improvement from what we have baseline right now and what you guys are using in your models? And then how would you kind of reduce that bias overall if you're getting data from a certain section of the population? Because I think that's a big thing in AI, is getting biased data and figuring out, this population is fully healthy, they're always running, they're into gym and working out and everything, so you kind of get something more tailored to certain people, especially with health, because it's so personalized.
I'll just start out, but I think that bias is probably one of the most foundational core things that we need to do in AI development, but it's important to understand that it starts from the very moment of conception. So when we think about what's called the AI life cycle, it starts from I've got an idea through to it's being monitored in real world practice, and I'm seeing how it behaves over time. And there's 7 or 8 categories in between that. And so one of the key things is that, if we look at AI today, we can see very obvious biases in that over 80% in most models, it's Caucasian. And when we look at, most in cardiovascular care, only 20, at most 30% representation of women. So we should not expect these models actually to be fair and unbiased. They inherently are. And so the trouble is that often we're not collecting the data to identify the bias, because the data sets that these are being generated from are large, they've been collected over 20 years, and we don't even know what that person's race was. We don't even know whether or not they have a unique profile, because we don't have that data. We've only got what the test is. And so I think that just philosophically how to address the bias, which is, if the model hasn't seen somebody like you before, it's going to make a random call, right? And it can sometimes be confidently wrong, right? So very convincingly wrong. And so what we need to do is, as a community, we need to expand access to our data resources. There are opportunities with federated learning, but there's also opportunities with creating large foundation models from data that's all over the world. And so one of the things that we've been doing in our team is actually launching multinational initiatives. And so we've got recruitment in Cape Town, South Africa. We've got it in Hong Kong. We've got it in Europe and in the US. And so, particularly for the very reason that we've got to make sure these models have seen everybody from all walks of life. So I think it's a very, very important challenge.
Great. Yes, we had a question right here.
Greg?
There was an article in the Globe and Mail this week about access to imaging in Canada. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, how is AI going to change, or how can it improve access, patients getting a scan within a reasonable amount of time to get the answer right the first time within a week? And because, as we know, James, in Calgary, the wait list for a cardiac MR is a year and a half. Yeah. And you have to ask yourself the question, what's the value of an MR when you have to wait a year and a half to get it? Yeah. And so what's the plan, even locally, to integrate AI to effect to either change the protocols or change the way that things are done so that the general population has better access? Yeah, absolutely. I will speak to that because my name was mentioned directly, so I feel like it was pointed. So what's happened is that there's been a tremendous growth in need and with fixed resources, right? And so while Calgary has the best access in Canada to cardiac MRI, we do over 4,500 for our population, which per capita is double anywhere else, including Toronto. But what's happened is the demand has grown exponentially, especially over the last 3 years. And so how do we actually leverage AI to be able to solve that problem? And actually, it's not a problem of just doing faster contours. And so Greg is right that what we need to do is bring it forward into the intelligence pathway of saying, was that even a correct referral? When we get that information, we should actually be able to predict, is that MRI going to change care at all? We have the data to do it uniquely in Calgary because we have 40,000, 50,000 MRIs and 30,000 patients with the indication mapped to the outcomes. So we should just do it, all right? Now, will that scale to other parts of Canada and elsewhere? I don't know, but at least we can locally solve these problems better than other people. The key thing is that comes with change management because our local groups of clinicians have learned just to keep firing off requisitions. So it's part of the education process of saying we can use AI to actually improve your decision making, but please accept our recommendations, and that's the trust part. But I think it's a very important role of AI is not just to improve the actual technology itself, but how we're using that technology. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And that goes back to the trust, right? The more that you trust and that you are co-developer, perhaps, that you basically work with the researchers, and then you're going to use it and trust it and say, okay, I'm not going to ask for this MR because it is not going to change the outcome for this particular patient, but it is going to change the outcome for these 10 patients that are not going to get it in time.
Another part of it is the image acquisition time itself. For 40 flow acquisitions may have taken 40 minutes. Now we can reduce it to 15, 20 minutes. That also allows more patient throughput. Once the scans are there, we could train more people to analyze the images in parallel, but if the acquisition time itself is limited, we can't put schedule more patients in.
Yeah, this is actually a really good example. So the province actually just invested $16 million in an algorithm. This is a Siemens algorithm that is designed to be able to make scans faster and then reconstruct them at higher resolutions. So you can get a lower quality scan in half the time, but then turn it using generative AI into what it would look like at a high resolution. And so that was a business case for the province, because they said, well, our wait list for MRIs is blown out, so let's use this algorithm that now is product, and we can actually get, they think about a 40% reduction in brain MRI scan times. It's what we need to do. We need to use AI in these ways. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't parallel in cardiac quite as well, but that's the type of innovation that we need to bring in.
Excellent. So I think we had another question. Yes?
So regarding the discussion on trust, actually, I'm curious from a student perspective, including undergraduate, graduate, and medical student perspectives, to what extent should we be taught or trained how the processes are working themselves outside of the AI model before we are told to go to the AI model and ask it whatever it is that we're trying to ask it in that sense?
So if I understand, you're asking, should I know deeply what the model is doing before I use it? And I think that piece with education is extremely important. And I think that my answer, and especially to an engineering student and graduate student, is yes. And not only to improve the trust, to really improve that co-working, like to understand what it can give you so that you can actually use that better. And I think there was an example just earlier from James, right? It's not it's not only what the answer is understanding how I can use that answer, right? And the more deeply you understand what's there. Now, that's wonderful if you're an engineering student. How do you then generalize that knowledge? How do you generalize? And that, I think, is a real challenge.
And as a student or even a professional developing a model, not only is it important to understand what you're creating, but what is establishing the ground truth? What is the appropriate acceptance criteria to evaluate that what you have created is accurate? And what does accurate mean? There could be many different facets to look at this.
Yeah, I think that we're increasingly battling this problem that we're progressively lowering the competence of our workforce, right? Because we're relying on these tools that now are better than we can possibly achieve, and I can have it write the code for this challenge in seconds, and yet I don't even understand how it did it. And so I think that building in kind of bars of competence, that you have to be able to explain what the model just did for you in order to use it effectively. And I think that that's a slippery slope, because what we're seeing is a lot of, even in industry, a lot of the computer science workforce starting to be replaced because I only need 5 developers instead of 10 now, because I can put Claude in there and it'll just write the code for me. So I think that that's a genuine concern, that our workforce is actually going to become more of a user of AI rather than an informed developer of the actual code itself. It's an interesting challenge.
Right.
I think there might be an aspect also about understanding the validation of the different software tools, particularly in healthcare, right? So there's only so much under IP protection that you're going to understand about the actual algorithm and what algorithms go into the models and that kind of thing. But understanding what has been done to validate that, does it have regulatory approval? Yeah, these things serve to build trust on the use of the tool. by all, right?
But also, I think it's important to understand what's the difference between creative output and even generative output, right? To not really think that they're the same, right? I mean, a generative process can tell you what is most likely the next, pixel or word or whatever is coming next. But where is the creative? Where is the creation? And I think it's very important to keep them distinct. And I think we do that instinctively for many things, right? I mean, when you Google something, you don't expect to find the next best or the innovative thing, right? You still think that you have to do it yourself. So I think there's a huge learning piece in AI in understanding very precisely what it can do for us. And it could come from understanding the technical details deeply, but not only. I think with the good education, it can also come from really understanding what it can do for you and what it can't.
Okay, fantastic. So we have a lot more questions here. We're kind of at the end of the question period time. Maybe the audience would be available to ask questions to the panelists here just in a few minutes. So I think that's a good opportunity to maybe wrap up this formal session so that we can get to the informal conversations. So I wanted to thank our panelists, and you're welcome to say a few seconds if there's anything else that we've missed that you want to kind of lead us off with, but thank you very much today. All good? Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, over to you. Thank you so much. Dr. Nugget.
Thank you, Tina. And thank you to all of the panel, Tina, Elena, James, and Esti, for the really engaging panel discussion this morning. This could have gone on for the rest of the morning, probably. And as Tina said, I'm hoping some of the panelists can maybe stay around for a few more minutes if you had a question that you didn't get a chance to ask during the formal panel discussion. Thank you also to all of you in the room for taking the time to spend parts of your morning with us. I hope you enjoyed the session this morning. You will receive a post-event survey here after this session, and I hope you'll take the time to complete that to tell us what you thought. We do value your feedback and always trying to improve the quality of these sessions. And then I hope to see you at our next Schulich Connects event. So this will be on November the 20th, and the title will be Engineered to Grow, the Future of Agriculture and Technology. So I hope to see you there. Keep an eye on your inbox for the invite to that event. And with that, thank you again, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for tuning in to this Schulich Connects. We'll see you next time.